Ladies and gentlemen, Chag Pesach Sameach, Good Moed, Moadim L'Simcha, a short, sweet idea towards reading Shir Hashirim on Shabbat. Now, we read actually Shir Hashirim also at the end of the Seder night. Those who have the minhag, the tradition, you can see at the back of your Haggadah many times after everything's over, the Shir Hashirim is printed. That means Shir Hashirim, whether it's on a private scale, reading at the end of the Haggadah, whether it's on a public scale, which means reading it from a Megillah in Shul on Shabbat of Pesach, Shir Hashirim obviously has a lot to do with Pesach. But what is Shir Hashirim really all about? I'd like to spend a few minutes looking into Shir Hashirim in a general angle and then in a specific and relevant, very relevant angle. Let's start from the general angle. It's quite clear that to Chazal, to Chachamim, throughout centuries, that this love story in Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, is an allegory, is a symbolic expression of some kind of event. And the Medrash talks about it. The Medrash in Shir Hashirim Rabbah talks about what is this really an allegory? What is the symbolic event? What is the event that this story is actually symbolizing? It's obviously it's a relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael, but further, what does it really mean? So there are four different ideas from the Tanoim. The Tanoim lived in the last 150 years of the Second Temple, and they had four different opinions. One said it's got to do with Kriyat Yamsuf, with crossing the Red Sea. Maybe that's why and that is the prominent expression of it. And therefore we say it on Pesach, and that is what we accept. But there are another three opinions. Other one says it talks about Mamad Har-Sinai, Yishakenu min hashikot bihu. It is when we accepted the Torah at Sinai directly from him. That was the highest event of the love between Hashem and Am Yisrael. The third opinion says no, it's the Mishkan. It's the end of Shemos and the beginning of Vayikra, where we're actually dealing just now, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu dwelling amongst Am Yisrael in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. And the fourth opinion is no, it's a permanent dwelling of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Am Yisrael, which was the Beis Hamikdash, which was 400 years later, the temple built by King Solomon. As those are the four different opinions, but we're going to go back to the first opinion. Now, we have to understand that we can actually read Shir Hashirim four different ways. Having these four different opinions in mind, we can actually read through Shir Hashirim and analyze the allegory and the symbolic event in a different angle. But since we're reading it for Pesach, we're going to go to the first angle, which is the angle of the splitting of the Red Sea, what really happened there. What we understand is that what the Medrash says in the Mechilta, Rabbi Shmuel, it says, Ra'ata shivcha al hayam ma shelo ra'u Yeshayahu veYechezkel, which means the actual event, the actual experience of standing and seeing the splitting of the Red Sea was greater than what Yechezkel and what Yeshaya saw in their prophecy. That means that the simplest person, the maid servant, at the splitting of the sea, saw revelation greater than many future revelations of great prophets. What exactly happened there? What was it? So we have to understand I'd like to focus now into one pasuk in the whole Shir Hashirim, in the whole Megillah of Shir Hashirim, which says the following. Chapter 2, verse 14, Yonati bechagvei hasela beseter hamadrega, harini et mar'ayich, hashmi'ini et kolech, ki kolech arev u'marech naveh, which translates into English, O my dove in the cranny of the rocks, hidden by the cliff. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is sweet and your face is pretty. What is going on here? What is the allegory? What is the symbolic expression here of what event? What is really happening here? So the Medrash tells us that the event is when Am Yisrael was standing in a very difficult situation, that they are the dove, they are the pigeon. Since the days of Noah, sending the pigeon and the pigeon coming back with a twig or an olive twig in his mouth, and the pigeon is the sign of peace, and the pigeon is a sign of Am Yisrael, and the Am Yisrael had a problem because they were between a rock and a hard place. They, on the one hand, they had the sea in front of them. On the other hand, they had the Egyptians behind them, and they were being crushed between the sea and the Egyptians, and they didn't know what to do. So what did they do? They shouted out to Hashem, and Hashem liked that, and he heard the cry out. Vayosha Hashem bayamahu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought salvation in the most unexpected way of splitting the Red Sea. So the Medrash says that they had a buzz. A net, a type of vulture coming down upon them from one side, and a snake from the other side. How come? The snake was inside the rocks, and the pigeon wanted to hide inside the rocks because this vulture came from outside to attack it. It's a big bird. But he couldn't get it because it was inside the rocks. But inside the rocks, they had the snake. So, this vulture is one of the gods of the Egyptians. Is symbolized by the vulture, and the snake is the sea. And they didn't know what to do, and so they called out to Hashem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a special miracle, and saved the moment. That is the allegory, and that is the story of this pasuk according to the Medrash. However, I want to share with you another historical event, much closer to us, and this is towards Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Day of Independence, the 77th Day of Independence that's coming up very soon. I want to share with you a following thought, because many people say we've got such a terrible war on our hands for over a year and a half. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're doing a mistake. Maybe we always believe that this is the beginning of the Geula. The fact that we've come back to the land, the fact that we've got 7.6 million Jews in the land, the fact that we've built the land and we've got more yeshivot and ulpanot, Bnei Akiva and Bechlal, more yeshivot and ulpanot, more learning Torah in the land than ever before in Jewish history. Amazing things are happening, but maybe what's happening now means that we're going backwards. Maybe we're in a regression because of the last year and a half. Is that so? So I want to tell you, I was a young man. I was 19 years old. After the Camp David, that Begin and Jimmy Carter and Anwar Sadat met together and made the peace treaty with Egypt at Camp David. And upon the agreement of the peace with Egypt, we gave back the whole of the Sinai Desert. Now, the whole of the Sinai Desert included a big town called Yamit, and it had to be evacuated. So giving back, giving away all the Sinai Desert, it was the third of the total land that we had in Israel. So a lot of land we're giving back, but it's mainly desert. But there was this big town, and it had to be evacuated. So we went to Rav Tzvi Yehuda HaKohen Cook, who was still alive then. He passed away only 1983. And in 82, in March 82, he passed away. But in 1980, we went to him and said, what's going to happen? We're going to evacuate a Jewish town? Isn't that a regression in the progress of our Geula, of our redemption? We see Medinat Yisrael as steps in our Geula. We take to two words of reservation. We say Rishit Tzmichat. It's the beginning of the budding of our Geula. But we're on the way. Isn't this going backwards now that we're giving to Egypt so much of the land, and we're actually uprooting a town, Yamit, we're actually doing something negative? Isn't that going back? So he answered us. I remember this clearly. He answered us by saying this pasuk, Yonati bechagvei hasela beseter hamadriga, O my dove in the cranny of the rocks, hidden by the cliff. In the translation, what is skipped here is seter hamadriga. Madriga means a step. Now, there are, and he explained to us, there are steps in redemption, in Geula. It's not a ramp. That means we're not going to have a steady incline until we get to Geula Shlema. No, it's steps. And when you have steps, you have a corner in the step, especially when it's in the cliffs. It's in the rock, and sometimes the step isn't 90 degrees. It's a bit like this, and therefore there is an enclave where there can be a snake inside, and there can be the vulture from the outside, and that's where the dove is set. It's a dark spot on the way up. We're going up the steps, but it's a dark. He said, uprooting this town, Yamit, is a black. It's a dark space on the way up, and there'll be more dark spaces on the way up, but we're on the way up. And he encouraged us. And I want you to know, this war that we're having already for a year and a half is a dark spot on the way up. Yes, we still have so many hostages, and we still have so many wounded soldiers, and we have so many soldiers that fell, and we're still fighting, and we're still having a difficult time day by day here in Israel, but it is a dark spot on the way up because Am Yisrael is progressing, the Geula is progressing. We're coming to the 77th year of Medinat Yisrael, which is an expression of the Geula. We haven't got full Geula yet, as I said. It's only Reshit Tzmichat, it's at the beginning of the budding of the Geula, but hopefully we shouldn't be disencouraged by this war. We are on the way up, and we'll get to Geula Shlema b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen.